All right. We are going to now be talking about the central nervous system. And we had said that we have 4 different kinds of glial cells we're going to talk about. And last time, when we were talking about the peripheral nervous system, we started out talking about Schwann cells. And we had said that that actually all peripheral nervous system nerves are associated with a Schwann cell. Now, we also have myelin-containing cells that are wrapped around axons of the central nervous system. They're not Schwann cells. They're something called an oligodendrite. They play the same role. But what's interesting is that one oligodendrite will provide myelin to multiple axons, and it always is going to wrap around the axon. And not all central nervous system neurons have oligodendrites. Some of them, the ones that are myelinated, the ones in what we call the white matter, have oligodendrites associated with them. And the ones that are in the gray matter of the brain don't have an oligodendrite. They don't have the Schwann cells on them. Now, what did we say in the large peripheral nervous system neurons? When the Schwann cell wraps around, we had said you get this very rapid saltatory conduction. Well, you get the same thing in the white matter of the central nervous system. Why? Because of these oligodendrites. So we have the oligodendrites that are there, and then I'm trying to see if we did. Yeah, so they're going to resemble an astrocyte. So with the oligodendrite, it is going to be, you can see it here. It's wrapped around here, and it's wrapped around there, and the cell is in between there. And it looks a little bit like this thing we call an astrocyte, which is right here. Here we have a blood vessel, and here we have a neuron. And you can see that it is a go-between cell. So what did we say last time when we were talking about the peripheral nervous system? We said we have the myelin-containing cells called the Schwann cells, and then the central nervous system version of that, it's not a Schwann cell, it's an oligodendrite. Then in the peripheral nervous system, we had said we had the satellite cells that are there to protect the little neurons, and we had the same thing in the central nervous system, and except that those, not satellite cells, no. There's something called an astrocyte. They look like a star. That's what they think they look like. So they look a little bit like a star. And what did we say they're going to do? They're going to be protecting the neurons, keeping the bad stuff away. So they are maintaining the blood-brain barrier. Maintaining the blood-brain barrier. So they're going to regulate the entry of substances into the neurons of the brain and the spinal cord. It ends up, neurons have this sort of an unusual nutritional requirement. They feed on lactate. So what the astrocytes do is they convert the blood glucose into lactate, and they give it feed the neurons. Yeah. They also are going to play a role in metabolism of neurotransmitter substances, and they help to maintain the ion balance. And if you look at the slide where we're looking at astrocyte function, it says maintain proper potassium K plus, potassium ion concentrations. And what that means is they're going to gather up potassium ions that are in the extracellular environment. Now, you don't understand why that's significant, perhaps, but it will be very significant in terms of nerve transmission. So it's actually a really important role. So they're going to be scavenging up stray potassium ions. They're going to be feeding lactate, converting glucose into blood sugar glucose into lactate, feeding the neurons. They're going to be, waste material is going to be moving through them to the circulatory system. And they're going to produce scar tissue if you have a brain injury. All right, so speaking of injuries, if we think of injuries and or infections or in any of those kinds of things, we would think of white blood cells, right? Well, it ends up in the brain and the spinal cord, in the central nervous system. We have a kind of glial cell that is going to be acting like a white blood cell. We don't call it a white blood cell. We call it a microglia. It's a little bugger, so we call it microglia. And it's snow-shaped as opposed to star-shaped, whatever difference that is. But the microglia is going to be providing immune system protection. So if you get an infection, a brain infection, these little guys are there to hopefully prevent damage. I had mentioned stem cells in one of the previous talks. And as part of that talk, I'd said the stem cell can become a neuron, right? When I was talking about when producing new neurons, I'd said it requires a stem cell. Well, say you have some major, horrible something happen in your brain or your spinal cord, and you lose a whole lot of astrocytes, some of your glial cells. Well, it ends up the microglia can de-differentiate into astrocytes. So these are kind of like little stem cells that are there to help produce other kinds of cells that maybe you need. So we have the microglia that are the immune system cells of the central nervous system. Did you ever see a movie called Spinal Tap? I didn't see the movie. Quite honestly, I didn't see the movie. But I know the name, and it's one of those iconic movies, and I'm really not worried about speaking about the movie, but I'm talking about a spinal tap. And I think everyone would sort of in general know that involves, kind of a scary procedure where they stick a needle in and they pull out fluid from your central nervous system, from your spine, right? All right, so if with that in mind, what does that mean? That means that we have fluid-filled chambers and passageways in the central nervous system. And the material, the fluid that is flowing through there is something called cerebrospinal fluid. And when you get a spinal tap, what they're doing is they're taking some of that fluid out and they're looking to see if you have an infection or whatever. I don't know what they're looking for, but that kind of thing, right? And so if you have this fluid, it needs to circulate, and it does circulate. It circulates through these chambers and passageways in the central nervous system. Now, if it's going to circulate, you have to have some mechanism. Circulating means flow, right? You have to have some mechanism for producing the flow. This is slide number 4, or cell number 4 of the glial cells of the central nervous system. There's something called the ependymal cells. And these fluid-filled chambers and passageways in the central nervous system are lined by ependymal cells. And the ependymal cells, I don't seem to see a picture of them. There they are. The ependymal cells, see here's the fluid-filled chamber here, and the ependymal cells are these here on the surface of it. And you notice they have cilia. We were talking about flow, central cerebrospinal fluid flow is produced by ependymal cells, the cilia. They say, move, move, move. flow. That's what they do. So the ependymal cells are ciliated and they line the fluid-filled ventricles and central canal of the central nervous system. They also are going to play a role in making that cerebrospinal fluid. Okay. Those are the cells of the nervous system. All right, so this is the final video blog in this section. I'll get them uploaded to YouTube and put onto the PowerPoints, and then get that posted to you guys. And I know as I warned you yesterday, it's Thursday. Sorry, but that's okay. You'll see them today. Talk to you later.